Warning: this show is not recommended for children under 13 years old. Parental discretion is advised. This is not a children's channel. Hello, everyone. And with that, I would like to begin my individual live stream. I used to stream by myself, not frequently, but I used to stream by myself once or twice a week. It would depend on what was going on. For quite a while. In fact, when Retro Rogues first started, it was actually called Rogues Radio. And with Rogues Radio, we didn't have any kind of a live show, and we didn't actually stream on YouTube or any other platform. What we did was we recorded an audio version of the show at some point, and then it would come out whenever it came out once it was edited and ready to go. And later on, I suggested that we might look into a live show. And before we did that, I actually used to do little preview episodes that were maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes long, where I would maybe talk about what we were going to talk about the next day, or maybe I would come online the day after we recorded, and I would talk about something that we had talked about previously. And anyway, I did quite a few of these little videos by myself. The interesting thing about my YouTube, which is the only source of the Retro Rogues live on YouTube right now, because Dave doesn't have a YouTube channel anymore. The funny thing is, I've been looking at some of the videos that I have, and what's been popular and what hasn't been. And popularity is sort of a relative term on my channel, because I still am under 100 subscribers. I think I'm around 50, 52, depending on whether I lost some people or not. So I don't have a lot of subscribers on my YouTube channel, but I do have a few videos that have over 100 views. And one of the main ones that had over 100 views was actually about the Orville, which I found very interesting, because in that particular video, I took a different position than my co-host. We kind of were at odds about the latest Orville news, and it's just interesting that particular video seemed to resonate and seemed to actually do fairly well. So anyway, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I should be doing some of my own streaming. For anyone that was wondering about what happened yesterday, unfortunately, my co-host wasn't feeling well, and I was not able to get another host in time in order to do the show. And I apologize about that. I did try to make some inquiries about maybe having somebody co-host with me, and I just couldn't get it together in time. The Retro Rogues format is such that it's almost impossible to do that show without a little bit of preparation, because in the Retro Rogues format, we generally try to review something that's a little bit more current in the first segment. Then we do pop culture news, we do streaming wars, and then we review something that's more retro, something that's an older film or older television show, and we talk about that. Well, it's hard to do that if the person you're talking to hasn't watched those things. And coordinating that was too difficult to do with the time allotted. But I do want to put it out there that Dave, although he was having some health problems, he assured me that he would be able to join the broadcast next week. So hopefully we'll have a new Retro Rogue show next week. But in the meantime, I have been kind of, I've been wanting to do some of my own content more on my channel. And I have 3 channels. I'm doing a multi-stream right now. I have my YouTube channel, I have my Twitter, and I have my Twitch. And so I'm not using the Facebook, Dave's Facebook, which is what we also use for the Retro Rogues format. At some point, I may add a Facebook channel, or I may use an existing channel if I can get permission to use it. For those of you that are not aware, my actual name, I go by BaseGod14, as you can see in the corner, BASSGOD14, BaseGod14. That's where you can find me on places like Twitter and Twitch and YouTube. But my name is Eric Alexander, and I'm actually the chief financial officer of a small production company in Arizona called Bad Bob Productions. Now, Bad Bob does have a Facebook, And at some point, I may look into doing a show there or incorporating my show that I'm doing now over there. But right now, this is basically just a test run. I'm not expecting a lot of people to be viewing me or anything like that. To be honest, most of the audience for Retro Rogues is on Facebook. And since I'm not using the Facebook, because again, that's Dave's, I'm just using the outlets that I have under my exclusive control to do my own little show, which I'm kind of thinking I want to do probably the day before or day after, or possibly both, with Retro Rogue kind of being the meat in the sandwich. So I would maybe do a short show on Tuesday evening, and then maybe do a longer show on Thursday evening where I could go over stories that we weren't able to get into Retro Rogues because of time. That's happened in several past episodes. That's happened where I've had to cut articles because it was just taking too long. And we don't really like to do Retro Rogues more than 3 hours. And I personally don't like super long live stream shows. Unless there's an audience there and people are really getting into the content and there's a lot of comments flying back and forth, I don't see any reason to have a show that long. So anyway, I'm trying to give a little bit of context as far as what I'm doing today. This is not a Retro Rogues live show. This is just the Base God Live. And yes, I am the God of Base, the 14th God of Base, as a matter of fact. And no, that's not bass. I'm not a fisherman, although I've thought about getting into it. No, I was a bass player for many years in many bands, and that's why I call myself the Bass God. And I like this image that we have here of me with a filter as the Night King from Game of Thrones, which, of course, I have a whole video about Game of Thrones jumping the shark if you want to check that out. It's actually one of the most popular videos I have on my YouTube. So please feel to check that out sometime to see more about what I'm about personally when I'm not involved with another person, when I'm not having a co-host. So it's just me tonight. And I also want to mention that I do have a political live stream show that I do every Monday called Starship Liberty. And I'm sorry, I already messed that up. Liberty Starship. It's called Liberty Starship. And we do have that on YouTube, Twitter, and also we're on one other platform, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Yes, we're on Facebook as well. So if you're interested in politics, join us sometime over there. We do have multiple videos that I take from our live streams, and our live streams are only usually about an hour long. That's every Monday at, let's see, that would be at 7 p.m. No, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I just messed that up. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. 3-hour time difference between the West Coast and the East Coast right now. So anyway, I haven't done a show by myself in quite a while. So in a lot of ways, this is a great experiment for me. So again, I am the 14th God of Base, Base God 14, and I'm coming to you live. I do plan to take this episode and chop it up by subject matter later on so I can provide some additional content for my YouTube channel and possibly some more tweets for my Twitter and all that good stuff. But if you're out there, please feel free to chime in. It's always a lot more fun that way. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and get into pop culture news. So let's see, what have we got here for you for pop culture news? Let me get my my share screen going here. Unfortunately, I don't have anybody to tap dance for me. I have to do this all on my own. I'm going to start out with something. Well, this isn't even pop culture news. This is just something that I think is pretty interesting. So let me take the pop culture news graphic down because, yeah, let me take that down because this is just something that's interesting. This is in the world of conspiracy, and I could never probably talk about this on Retro Rogues Live, so it's kind of fun to talk about it here. So let's look at the headline. This is from the Daily Star, and it says, Adolf Hitler hunters find Argentina bunker they claim Nazi leader hid in after World War II. Wow, this has got a lot of ads. All right. My goodness. The underground bunker Adolf Hitler fled to after surviving World War II may have been found in Argentina, believers in an outlandish conspiracy have claimed in a documentary. For years, conspiracy theorists have claimed the Nazi leader managed to escape from Berlin at the end of World War II. The outlandish theory was further fueled in 2016 when the FBI released files of so-called sightings of Hitler, including some from Argentina. But despite clear historical evidence of the evil dictator's demise, a study of his teeth in 2018 concluded that he had died in his bunker on this day in 1945. The bonkers conspiracy refuses to go away. History Channel documentary Hunting Hitler delved into the theory earlier this year, with a team of experts setting on a mission to find, I believe they meant Hitler, not Hitler. The one episode appeared to get very close. Private investigator Stephen Rambaum led his team to a property in northern Argentina, Charada? I'm terrible with names, which used to be the home of a prominent Nazi leader. They were led to the region by one of the files released by the FBI, written by an unnamed informant in November 1945. It read, Hitler is in Argentina. He is living in a great underground establishment beneath a vast hacienda 675 miles west from Florianópolis. I am terrible with names. After getting permission from the property owner to investigate the land, Stephen's partner Tim brought David Kelly, a subsurface imaging specialist, to map what was beneath the surface. David is seen hovering the heavy device, which is equipped with ground-penetrating technology, over the garden in a bid to pick up irregular signals. As he moves closer to a pile of bricks, the machine detects a busy disturbance near a tree. We are surveying the property, and then we find one little blip that looks like the beginning of an entrance, Stephen says. At 1 foot later, and 5 tons of bricks sitting there, covering whatever that little anomaly is. So they obviously kept looking. And it says, was this a place? Well, this is really awkwardly worded. Was this a place an underground facility could have been located? Was this a place an underground facility could have been located? Yes. The Hitler alive conspiracy was finally disregarded by historical experts across the world after the teeth found in the bunker match X-rays taken of Hitler in 1944, descriptions provided by the Soviets by Hitler's dentists. This led the author of a 2018 study in the European Journal of International Medicine. The teeth are authentic. There's no possible doubt. Our study proves that Hitler died in 1945. So bottom line is that they're saying in this documentary that they found something which could have been a bunker, but it doesn't look like they actually went in there and confirmed anything. So it just keeps the mystery going. And I do think it's a mystery, regardless of what we're being told about teeth and all that kind of stuff, because, yeah, we're talking about a study that was made recently on stuff that's been hanging around for years. And I hate to tell you this, folks, but stuff that's been hanging around that long can easily be faked. That's just my take. But it is a fascinating mystery, and it definitely goes into the realm of conspiracy. All right, so some actual pop culture news. Now that I got that out of the way, I just thought that was an interesting story about Hitler's bunker being found, and that it would be kind of something fun to talk about. So here's an interesting article that I found from Showbiz Cheat Sheet, and this article is. I hate it when it's formatted weird like this and I can't see when it was dated. It's a fairly recent article, though. It says, every May 4th is Star Wars Day because you can say, may the 4th be with you. And it sounds like, may the Force be with you. Star Wars Day 2020 is going to be special for a lot of reasons. It will be the first May 4th since the Skywalker saga ended with The Rise of Skywalker. Disney Plus is planning a Mandalorian documentary and moved the season finale of Clone Wars to the 4th. Oh, and Disney might sue you for tweeting hashtag May the 4th now. Disney Plus tweeted preview of their Star Wars Day plans, and they included a legal disclaimer. They have since clarified what they meant, but it has some fans worried that the mouse was now exerting control over anyone who tweeted hashtag May the 4th. Disney Plus solicited Star Wars memories for hashtag May the 4th. On April 27th, the official Disney Plus account asked fans to share their favorite Star Wars memories for Star Wars Day. Sounded harmless enough. Celebrate the saga, Disney Plus tweeted. Reply with your favorite Star Wars memories or Star Wars memory, and you may see it somewhere special on hashtag May the 4th. They got over 3,000 replies with a few sincere memories, but mostly people angry about the sequel trilogy. That's pretty funny. The next tweet took all the fun out of Star Wars Day. Disney Plus followed their Star Wars Day tweet with some not so fine print. It turns out Disney wants the rights to hashtag the May 4th tweets. Quote, by sharing your message with us using hashtag May the 4th, you agree to our use of the message and your account name in all media and our terms of use here. And there's a link, Disney Plus tweeted. The Twitter user mocked Disney's attempt to legally own a hashtag. Quote, my favorite Star Wars memory would have to be the time Disney tried to lay legal claim to every tweet on Twitter that use a particular hashtag, they wrote, adding May the 4th. Filmmaker Phil Lord, co-director of the Lego Movie and 2122 Jump Street, disapproved of Disney's tactic of monopolizing Star Wars Day 2. As you can see, he says, this seems illegal and un-American. The user gave them a tongue lashing. You cannot make use of a hashtag you didn't start and don't own, consent to an EULA. You absolute IP ghouls, he wrote before swearing at them. The user dragged Disney's controversial history of copyright claims into it. May the 4th remind everyone that Disney has effectively destroyed how copyright law should work so they can milk franchises for possibly hundreds of years while creating a scenario where small content creators have their livelihoods threatened for snippets of songs and movies, wrote, quote, Walt at Watsu. By the way, this is a bigger issue here that I think is worth examining. At this point in time, copyright laws are basically being called the Mickey Mouse laws, because what's happened is Disney has constantly been changing the copyright laws so that they can keep the rights to Mickey Mouse. And what this has done is it has prevented IP that should be in the public domain at this point in time from being available to independent creators. For instance, if we look at a property like Sherlock Holmes, Sherlock Holmes is a world-renowned or world-recognized character that's in the public domain. He's been in the public domain for quite some time. So if you want to make a Sherlock Holmes story, you can. You should be able to also do a Mickey Mouse story if you wanted to, but you can't because the Disney company has constantly pushed the copyright laws. They've constantly lobbied Congress to change the copyright laws so they can effectively keep Mickey Mouse forever. That's a terrible thing for independent creators, I will say. It's a terrible thing, I think, for audiences as well. So it says, don't worry, it's still safe to tweet, hashtag May the 4th. There was enough confusion that Disney Plus added a third tweet in their hashtag May the 4th thread. It turns out the legal disclaimer only applied to direct replies to their Star Wars Day tweet using the hashtag. So they made a clarification that they were not trying to lay claim on hashtag May the 4th and claim some sort of ownership of it, and the fact that you were entering into some sort of agreement with them by using the hashtag. Instead, what they're saying is if you respond to their particular thread using the hashtag, that is when you are indicating consent to their user agreement, which I don't know how legal that is either. But it is some clarification about this story of Disney perhaps trying to at least imply that they had some sort of ownership of the hashtag May the 4th, and realizing that had totally backfired and was not a good idea after all, and they should provide some clarification that they were only claiming ownership of or claiming some sort of user agreement if you actually responded to their thread, which tells you don't respond to their thread, because who knows if that will actually hold up or not. My guess is that it wouldn't, but you never know. So let's move on. This is pretty interesting. This is kind of hot off the presses. So in the wake of Corona, we are now starting to talk about how do we get out of this mess that we put ourselves into. And however you fall on that issue, I don't really care at this point. The fact of the matter is, at some point, we're going to have to figure out how to reopen again. And that talk has started to occur in many parts of our economy and in many parts of our government. So this is a Motley Fool article, and it says a task force releases guidelines for reopening Disney World. A Florida task force put out guidelines for when the House of Mouse again opens its doors to the public. And this is a fairly recent article. It is dated April 29th. So it says, while Disney theme parks sometimes seem like worlds unto themselves, they still must follow state guidelines. As many states begin to assess their lockdowns and neighboring Georgia has opened most of its businesses, the state of Florida has created a task force to determine guidelines for how Disney World can safely open. Regulating the gamut of activities. Disney World is composed of many different parts that each require their own set of standards. The task force was assigned to make recommendations for restaurants, theaters, hotels, and other entertainment facilities, all of which apply to Disney World. The 44-person task force included Orlando community members, sports teams executives, and Disney executives. Socializing and staying apart. Some of the guidelines that the task force set forth are: the park will begin operation at 50% capacity and then move to 75% capacity. Queries for rides should have markers set up 6 feet apart. That sounds similar to what you probably see at your local shopping, your local grocery store. All employees will need to wear face masks and have their temperature taken before they enter. Someone whose temperature is over 100.4 Fahrenheit will be sent home. Employees will regularly disinfect and wipe down surfaces. There should be touch-free sanitizing stations at every ride's entrance and exit, plus all turnstiles and ticketing areas. By the way, that all sounds pretty reasonable to me. The task force did not indicate when the park may be able to reopen. Disney World employees have been furloughed since April 19th. So that seems like common sense to me, to be honest with you. I don't think that anything there is earth-shattering. I think that is a good way forward. If you go to your local supermarket or your 99-cent store or any place that's still open, which all those places probably still are in your community, they kind of have things like this going on right now. Minus, I don't think I would venture to guess they do not screen their employees. I just venture to guess they do not do that, especially some of the smaller grocery chains and things like that. I'd be willing to bet they don't do that. I don't know. Maybe they do. But I think that's a good idea. I think it's definitely a good idea for Disney World and Disneyland, for that matter, to do these things. And again, they seem like common sense to me. It's not really earth-shattering. I do have a story that's kind of related to that, though, that's kind of interesting. So I've actually talked about on the Retro Rogue show, I talked about Major League Baseball's plans and what they might be doing in terms of their path forward in the midst of Corona. And there is a plan as well with the NBA. And the reason that I am talking this way is because apparently I do not have the article queued. Give me 1 second so I can queue up the article. So there is some talk about the NBA coming back, and they're going to use Disney World. I thought was a pretty interesting story. There we go. I apologize. I thought I had that article all ready to go. And again, I don't have anybody to tap dance for me, so I have to kind of do the filler myself. So this is from Fox News. It says NBA considers Walt Disney World Resort as possible location for season return. And this was published 9 hours ago, so this is a very current article. So NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has long said that the league is considering many scenarios that would allow the season to resume. And according to a report on Wednesday, one option would include using the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida as the primary location. Like other leagues, the NBA has leaned towards isolating players and playing games in empty arenas. And according to The Athletic, one location mentioned includes Disney's property in Orlando. Other locations, including Las Vegas, have been floated around, but playing on Disney's properties makes the most sense logistically. A former Disney employee told Yahoo Sports earlier this month the property includes 12 on-site basketball courts, 2 of which lend themselves to broadcasting games. There's also a number of hotels that could easily house players, staff, officials, and even television crews. There would be no shortage of hotels, restaurants, entertainment, which makes quarantining players for an extended period of time more feasible. Still, the NBA will have to consider the likelihood of league-wide testing and the time needed for players to get back in-game playing shape. The league announced Monday that it's targeting May 8th to allow teams in cities with relaxed stay-at-home orders to re-enter facilities. The potential rule changes would allow teams to make their practice facilities available for use by players for workouts or treatment on a voluntary or individual basis if the team's facility is in a city no longer subject to a government restriction. The coronavirus pandemic put a halt on NBA games since March 11th, when the league suspended its season until further notice after Utah Jazz center Rudy Gobert tested positive for the virus. So this is an interesting idea. It's a little different, I think, than the idea that the Major League Baseball had. For those that don't know, it looks like Major League Baseball may be starting up again in Arizona. They're going to take the unique situation that Arizona offers because of our spring training facilities, and they would use those spring training facilities to effectively play games without any fans present. So they'd be playing the games alone. So they're looking at doing that. Oh, hey, Man of Sand. Yes, said no show last night. Yeah, what happened, Man of Sand, was that Dave wasn't feeling well. I kind of mentioned that earlier when I was starting my broadcast. Dave wasn't feeling well yesterday. I did look into the possibility of getting another host, and I just could not make that happen. So the good news is Dave thinks he will be fine by next week, so the show should be as regular for Retro Rogues Live. But I decided that I would go ahead and do a little bit of pop culture news, streaming wars coverage, and things like that for my own channels so that I have some content, because I believe it's very important for any channel to constantly have new content. So Man of Sand, I'm glad you're here. Again, I was just talking about the NBA's possible use of Walt Disney World Resort to bring about their season, and comparing it to the Major League Baseball's plan to do something similar in Arizona. Although it sounds like the Walt Disney World Resort has much less facilities than they do over here in Arizona. The one thing, of course, I would imagine that the Walt Disney World Resort might have that Arizona lacks a little bit is they might have some more indoor facilities. Most of the stadiums, in fact, all of the stadiums that are used for spring training in Arizona are outdoor stadiums, and it is going to be very hot if the Major League Baseball does decide to do the season here. The one facility that they have available, though, that can be climate controlled is actually Chase Stadium, which is where the Diamondbacks play. That facility is huge, and it has a roof. So it actually can be climate controlled, but the other facilities cannot. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with both the NBA and Major League Baseball as they are trying to move forward, and as we're all trying to move forward, I think, in the midst of the pandemic, so that we can kind of get people working again and actually get the economy moving. And also, it's important to have some entertainment, I think, especially if you want people to stay home. You got to give them something to watch and something to do besides just watching the same movie on Netflix for the 100th time. So let's see. What else have we got as far as pop culture news? Here's an interesting interesting one. This is an Orville story. And as I mentioned before, right now, the most popular video I have is basically Dave and I arguing over season 3 of the Orville and some indications I had that I thought were very ominous, whereas Dave was very optimistic. And that probably sums up our personalities pretty well, because I tend to be more of the pessimist, and I tend to be the person that kind of like, well, I don't know if this is going to work. And Dave tends to be more of the optimist, which is good. That's why we do a show together. But this is not Retro Rogues Live. This is just The Base God Lives. So I'm going to take my own my own view of this story. So Star Trek star Jonathan Frakes would very much like to appear on the Orville. I don't think this is exactly big news for anybody that's followed Jonathan Frakes that much, but it says Star Trek The Next Generation star Jonathan Frakes has directed one episode of Seth MacFarlane's The Orville. Next time, he'd like to appear in front of the camera. Speaking to comicbook.com, Frakes says he wants to follow in the footsteps of fellow Star Trek actors Marina Sirtis, John Billingsley, and Robert Picardo have each played roles on the Orville. Quote, I keep waiting for a phone call. I am available. I've got a beard, Frakes says. Going on to say he'd be willing to play pretty much any character that have him on to play. Quote, I would just like to be just like I hoped and dreamed of being on the Big Bang Theory. There are certain things, the absurdity factor, like the Pez dispensers and the garden gnomes, certain benchmarks we all want to reach. Says the Orville is jumping from Fox to Hulu in its 3rd season. Frakes talked a bit about how the show resembles Star Trek The Next Generation, and he expects creator Seth MacFarlane will have more creative freedom thanks to the move. He really went in for it in terms of people from Next Gen, Frakes says of how MacFarlane staffed the Orville, referring to Star Trek veterans like Brandon Braga and Marvin Rush. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the audience was surprised that Orville was as serious as it was. I mean, it's wonderfully funny, but it's no Family Guy, certainly. I think Seth's a wonderful storyteller, and he loves him some Star Trek, and he really wanted to be the captain of a spaceship. God knows he made Fox enough money that he can be. And now that he's on Hulu, he has more freedom to play and not be limited by time, not to be limited by censors. But I think he's in the best of all possible worlds at the moment. So I want to talk about this comment here, because this is something that really concerns the heck out of me. Not to be limited by the censors. So he's in the best of all possible worlds at the moment. Now, this is one of the major problems I had with Star Trek Picard. Star Trek Picard has a ton of vulgarity in it in terms of profanity that's completely unnecessary and is just in there for complete and total shock value. Now, I used to watch Family Guy quite a bit, and Family Guy is all about shock value. And at some point, I just really wasn't into it anymore. I'm not saying Family Guy is a bad show. You know, if it's on, sometimes I'll watch it. I think it is funny. But it's also its own thing. You know, it's definitely its own thing. I do not want to see the Orville become more like Family Guy. I really don't. I think censors, in a lot of ways, actually help shows and help movies because they require the writers to be more creative. You can't just say F you. You have to find a different way of saying F you. You know, in the case of Battlestar Galactica, they invented their own curse words and they used the word frack, right? So there are ways to be creative when you have that kind of censorship. I think that kind of censorship is there more than anything for good taste, and it's not something that I personally think we need to be rallying against. And it stops the creativity of our writers. No, actually, it makes your writers a lot less creative. It actually makes your writers not think as much. It actually makes your writers have a lower vocabulary. That's what I was always taught, was that cursing is a sign of a low vocabulary because you cannot express yourself in any way other than to use an expletive. So this kind of concerns me. This is something that I talked about before when we were talking about the rumors about what was going to happen with the next season of the Orville. And it seems that Frakes is all on board for this. Frakes has made some other comments that have just mystified me. You know, I don't want to make this personal. I know that there's some people that are very angry with Jonathan Frakes for some recent remarks that he made. regarding the people. Basically, he said that people that hated Picard were still going to watch it just to hate it. And I know a lot of fans got really upset about that, and I think justifiably so. I think Star Trek Picard is a terrible show. That's just my personal opinion. I think it's god awful, and I think one of the reasons it's god awful is because of all the profanity, and that we don't need that. And I don't want more profanity in the Orville. I don't want less Star Trek in the Orville. By the way, Frakes mentions in this article that, yeah, we had Next Gen alum that work on the Orville, which is great. Are there any Next Gen alum working on the on Picard or Discovery besides the actors? I don't think so. I don't think so, as far as the production staff or the writers or anybody else. So I don't know. I know that there's some people really trying to defend Frakes right now, and I've met him, and I think he's a nice guy. But that doesn't mean I'm just going to let him say whatever he wants and ruin every show that I enjoy just because of some silly Hollywood agenda. So that's kind of my hot take on that. But I will say that I have no problem with him being on the Orville. He's already been a director, and so obviously he has that cred. And I think the episode he directed, if I recall right, was actually a pretty good episode. But it's like, yeah, I don't think we need more profanity, and that the lack of censors is going to make them suddenly have this huge breadth of creativity on the Orville that's been lacking for the last 2 seasons. Because that's what I feel like he's kind of implying. That's sort of a backhanded compliment to say, like, oh, well, now they're going to be free to do what they really want, you know? So yeah. All right, I'll stop beating that dead horse. So here's another interesting article that I found. This is a Deadline article, and this has caused a little bit of a stir, I would say. So it says AMC tells Universal it won't license studio movies or the studio's movies after the CEO statements on Windows and Trolls World Tour. So AMC boss Adam Aron has just fired off a letter to Universal Studios chairman Donna Langley in response to NBC Universal CEO Jeff Schill's statements in the Wall Street Journal this morning about the 25 million PVOD success of Trolls Worldwide. So for those that don't know, Trolls Worldwide was released on video on demand and apparently made almost $100 million so far. It's unprecedented. These are numbers that we've apparently never seen on video on demand before. And of course, it's the result of the pandemic. Their theaters are not open. There's like one theater open in my metro area, which is a drive-in, which, by the way, actually has Trolls World Tour playing in it, by the way. I did confirm that. The one theater open in my community actually does play Trolls World Tour. And again, it's a drive-in. But for the most part, this film was released almost exclusively on video on demand. And they finally released some numbers and are basically saying the movie's made almost $100 million so far on video on demand. So, as Aaron explains to Langley in the letter, he initially got it. Theaters were closed, and the decision to take Trolls World Tour into homes was an exception. But Schell's words in the Wall Street Journal this morning have really stoked ire. It says, as soon as theaters reopen, we expect to release movies on both formats, indicating a day and date theatrical VOD shift. So again, what they're saying is, as soon as theaters reopen, we expect to release movies on both formats. Now, before the official shutdown started, back when many of the theaters were trying to look at ways to have social distancing, basically before most of the state governors made the decision for them. And it was the state governors who made this decision. And of course, in other parts of the world, there were other leaders that made that decision. But before theaters were forced to shut down, Universal had said that they were going to start releasing their films both at the theater and video on demand. And the way that was sort of marketed, the way that came across was, it made sense because we knew less people were going to be going to the theaters. So in the midst of this crisis, it made sense that Universal was going to start releasing films on both platforms. And many theaters were upset about that. Many theaters were upset even at that move because at that point they were still open. Then within a week or two, I think not even I think maybe a week and a half at the most, of Universal's announcement, then all the movie theaters were forced to close. So where we're at right now is Universal just kept going with their plan. In fact, like I said, they actually still are releasing their films at theaters that are open. There's just very few theaters open right now. Like I said, in my community, there's only one. But they did have Trolls World Tour at that one theater that's still open. But the way they really made their money was video on demand. Well, now Universal is basically saying that this model is going to go beyond the current pandemic. And now they're going to use this model even when the theaters open up again. And of course, this has got AMC up in arms. They're really upset about this. So basically what AMC is saying is that they are not going to support Universal's movies anymore. That if this is their model going forward, AMC is not going to, they're not going to play nice. They're going to basically stop showing Universal's movies at their theaters. Now, every indication is that AMC is in serious trouble right now. Serious trouble. So this is a kind of a bold move that they're making, in that they are basically saying they are not going to support Universal Studios anymore, and they are not going to take their movies. What Universal does going forward will also be interesting, because in addition to this VOD situation, video on demand, which is like, obviously there are multiple formats for video on demand. You can go to Amazon, you can go to PlayStation Network and download a movie. You can go to Apple, you can download a movie. That's video on demand. But what's interesting is, of course, the Peacock is going to be coming very soon, and it'll be interesting to see how they integrate that. Because, like, for instance, what Disney's been doing is Disney's been releasing films that were already in the theaters. They've been releasing them early on Disney Plus. So that's interesting to me to see whether Universal is going to do that with the Peacock format or not. If they're going to start releasing those films, earlier than they normally would, because it's kind of interesting, because they're making all this money on video on demand. So are they going to just keep the same video on demand window they normally would, or are they going to shorten it in the hopes that they maybe get some more Peacock subscriptions? And of course, Peacock is only available right now to Comcast subscribers, if I remember correctly. It's not available to the rest of us until later this month, I believe. I want to say it's later this month that they're going to start releasing it to the public. But right now, it's only available to Comcast subscribers. So it'll be interesting to see how AMC deals with that as well internally, especially now that AMC is saying, we're not going to show your movies even when we do open up. And who knows when movie theaters will be back open up anyway. So yeah, that's kind of a crazy story. But speaking of other virtual platforms, this is a BBC News article that says, major film festivals to unite for a YouTube event. This article is dated April 27th. It says, We Are One, a global film festival, will be hosted by YouTube from the 29th of May. It comes after coronavirus caused disruption to many international events as the film industry ground to a halt. The 10-day digital alternative will help to raise funds for the World Health Organization's COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund and beyond. 20 festivals from around the world are involved, including BFI London Film Festival, Jerusalem Film Festival, Mumbai Film Festival, and Marrakech International Film Festival, as well as Sundance Film Festival and Tribeca Film Festival. It says Tribeca, co-founded by Robert De Niro, has joined forces with the streaming giants to put on the online event after having been forced to postpone this year's festival. They hope it unites curators, artists, and storytellers to entertain and provide relief to audiences worldwide. So this is kind of interesting. I've seen some buzz, even locally, with the local Phoenix Film Festival, where they're trying to look at some online alternatives to how they might go forward, and also, of course, get revenue, because right now they're going to be starving for revenue. I believe the Phoenix Film Festival is usually in April, I want to say, and obviously that event was canceled. So a lot of film festivals right now are looking for online alternatives. I'm actually aware one of the films that I helped produce, Occupants, was involved recently in an online film festival. I retweeted that on my Twitter, but that was I want to say like 3 weeks ago or something like that. So it's interesting for me to see that a lot of these larger film festivals are also looking at an online alternative, which I think is doable in a film festival format. The biggest problem from an industry perspective is the really big film festivals, they're meant to help market new films. So what happens is you make a film, you get the financing and all that stuff, but you don't have the distribution yet. And what happens a lot of times is you go to a film festival, there's a great reaction to the film at the film festival, and then you're able to sell your film to a distributor. I don't know if that's going to be as easy in an online format. In fact, I believe this article even talks about how a lot of the films that are in that actual circuit won't be available at this event. So it's kind of interesting. It says the free event will include films, shorts, documentaries, music, comedy, and conversations, and a full schedule will be available nearer to next month's event. So we'll kind of see how that goes. I think it's a good idea to try to do these things online if possible. I just don't know if you can accomplish all the things that these kind of events are meant to accomplish in an online format. That would be my biggest concern. We'll see if they're able to do that. I think they need to have some sort of like maybe some Zoom style panels or something like that that could add another dimension and give it more of that film festival feel, and again sort of accomplish what it is that these film festivals are meant to accomplish. All right, so I've got an actual real entertainment news story here. If I can get the ads out of the way. This is from GameSpot. Apologize. Gamespot.com. It says Star Wars Disney Plus series casts Rogue One and Witcher 3 actors. Disney Plus's upcoming Cassian Andor show has 2 more actors joining the cast. And it's interesting because I haven't heard a lot about the Cassian Andor series, other than that it was greenlit and then it was experiencing delays. So it says the upcoming Disney Plus series following Rebel Alliance member Cassian Andor has 2 new actors joining the series. The show will be a prequel to Rogue One, a Star Wars story set 5 years before the 2016 movie. Says both Genevieve O'Reilly and Dennis Go have signed on to appear on the series, according to The Hollywood Reporter. They'll join Diego Luna, who will reprise his role as Andor. O'Reilly has already appeared in the Star Wars universe multiple times. She's played Mon Mothma in 2005's Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One, and on the animated series Star Wars Rebels. It's been confirmed she'll be playing Mothma once again for the Disney Plus show, which I think that's pretty cool news. I think she does a very good job as Mon Mothma, and she actually, my understanding was she was cast simply because of her resemblance to the actor who originally played Mon Mothma. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I need to get my tongue untwisted. But she physically resembles the actress who played Mon Mothma on the Return of the Jedi. And that's my understanding of why she was cast. But what I've seen of her in both the deleted scenes for Revenge of the Sith and obviously in Rogue One, which I loved Rogue One. I thought Rogue One was a great movie. I think she's done a good job. So that's kind of good news that she's going to be in the show. It says, as for Go, her role in the upcoming show has not revealed. So I guess has not been revealed. Her most notable work comes from the video game Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt, where she voiced Yennefer. She also provided voiceover work for Mass Effect Andromeda and Star Wars Battlefront, while also acting in movies and television. So that's interesting. So they're going with a voice actor, which that kind of says to me she might be a droid. That's kind of what it says to me. I don't know what the rest of you think, but that says droid to me, that she's going to be playing a droid if she's a voice actor. And then it says Stella, geez, I can't pronounce these names at all. Stellan Skarsgård and Kylie Solar also recently joined the cast. Much like Go, their roles are unknown at this time. Also, Alan's going to be reprising his role as K2SO, which I love K2SO. I thought that was a great character, definitely in line with the greatest droid characters in Star Wars. So he's going to be back. And they said that the show has been described as a spy thriller. However, it's unknown when it will air. Originally, the show was going to debut in 2021, but because of COVID-19 pandemic, production has yet to begin. So that's interesting. So they're announcing some more casting, even though we don't have any dates as far as production. And I had heard that there were additional issues as far as writing, that there was some problems as far as approving the scripts. But again, that might have also got twisted up with the Obi-Wan issues, where they definitely were rejecting scripts, and scripts were an issue. So we'll see what happens with Cassian Andor. I think it's nice at least to hear that they are going forward with some casting announcements, which at least will increase buzz for the show, which I'm hoping is going to be good, because I actually really did enjoy Rogue One. That's the only Disney War film that I really liked. Other than that, I did not like any of the Disney films at all. But Rogue One I own. It's in my personal collection. I recommend it. I think it is definitely true Star Wars, and it's a fun film. It's a good film, and I sincerely enjoyed it. And I don't understand the detractors of the film, to be honest with you. All right. So then we also, in that vein, here's an article as well. This is from entertainmentnews.com. And it says, The Mandalorian Season 3 hints the Disney Plus series avoids the Star Wars sequel trilogy's fatal flaw. It says, The Mandalorian Season 3 is already in the works. Which is kind of funny considering Season 2 hasn't come out yet. After The Mandalorian Season 1 performed so well in late 2019, fans were excited about where the show could go next. With Season 2 announced for an October 2020 release, the series appeared to be setting a solid pace. Moreover, its production was able to avoid any potential delays caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Star Wars isn't what it once was. Whether you want to blame Disney's purchase of Lucasfilm, the direction of the sequel trilogy, or simply the fact the franchise extended beyond the initial trilogy at all, Star Wars fans seem to have as much hate as love for the galaxy far, far away. In fact, the only recent aspect of the saga that is largely beloved is The Mandalorian. After all, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker proved to be a major disappointment to many fans and critics, and the film's box office performance fell short of expectations too. So by any measure, the big screen side of Star Wars is at a crossroads. But between Star Wars: The Clone Wars and The Mandalorian, fans have a new hope for the future. The Mandalorian in particular is already managing to sidestep the pitfalls that have plagued the recent Star Wars movie. Here's why. Perhaps more than ever, the Disney Plus series is setting an admirable template for kickstarting a new era of Star Wars. Pedro Pascal at the Mandalorian premiere said that Season 3 is already in the works. After The Mandalorian Season 1 performed so well in late 2019, fans were excited about where the show could go next. With Season 2 announced, I'm sorry, I think that kind of just went back over. So it says, thanks to Variety, word has arrived that series creator Jon Favreau and his team are already working on Season 3. The report claims Favreau has been writing the season, quote, for a while, though it's unclear how far along the scripting process truly is. This could involve breaking the story or actually writing each episode. Moreover, the art department over at The Mandalorian has reportedly begun pre-production work on Season 3. Likely, characters, environments, props, and even sequences are being conceptualized to prepare for the next stage of production. A universe as expansive as Star Wars requires much more legwork than most series, of course. So they're saying that I guess they think that The Mandalorian Season 3 is hopefully going to avoid the divisive nature of the Disney War trilogy, which I definitely have that hope. The reviews that I participated in, we've actually been pretty impressed with The Mandalorian. I have my issues with it, particularly in the writing. I think that they could use a little help in the writing department. It is very much, for better or worse, Saturday morning cartoon is the best way that I describe it. But overall, I think it's entertaining, and I like the overall story arc, and I love Baby Yoda. In fact, I would be fine with the Baby Yoda show. I kind of feel like that would be that'd be fine with me if Baby Yoda just kind of went off on his own and had his own adventures. I don't necessarily need the Mandalorian at this point. I like to, the Mandalorian is a complete ripoff of Boba Fett, and I think we should have the real thing. We should have Boba Fett. But, we'll see whether that happens or not. But I am looking forward to season 2, and it's interesting to see they're already working on season 3. It's kind of interesting to see how a lot of these streaming platforms seem to be doing that, where they greenlight a season before they even know what's happening with the last season. We saw that with Star Trek Picard, where Star Trek Picard had season 2 greenlit, I think before season 1 even came out. And my guess is they can do that because these seasons are so short. The Mandalorian was only 8 episodes for its first season. Star Trek Picard was only 10 episodes for its first season. So I guess since 2 seasons of these shows don't equal 1 season of a standard television show, which is usually at least 22 to 26 episodes, I guess maybe they feel that they can do this. I don't know. I think it's kind of weird because everything I've heard says that these shows are incredibly expensive. So you would think they would want to kind of look and see before they went ahead and greenlit the next season. But I guess I don't know. It has to have something to do with marketing too, I'm sure. Basically, they just like, this is too big to fail. We have to go ahead and do this. So anyway, that's all that I have for pop culture. I kind of want to get into streaming wars, which was kind of even on my last episode of Retro Rogues Live, our streaming war segment got all screwed up because I was having connection problems, which I'm sure is very common for a lot of people right now. Being able to stream or being able to even watch a stream right now can be difficult depending on the area that you're in and what time of day it is. So this is a little bit older article, but I wanted to go over it. I touched on it on the last episode of Retro Rogues Live, but I couldn't share the actual article. So it's a little bit dated. This is a Vulture article from April 21st. And it says, Netflix has added a stunning number of subscribers during the lockdown. Netflix added 15.8 million new subscribers worldwide during the first 3 months of 2020, more than doubling its forecast for the quarter as global lockdowns designed to slow the spread of the coronavirus dramatically increased demand for the streaming giant. It was the largest single quarter growth spurt in the company's history. While hit shows such as Tiger King and Love is Blind clearly helped, the COVID-19 pandemic has meant Netflix growth has temporarily accelerated due to home confinement. The service said in a letter to shareholders on Tuesday, quote, during the first 2 months of 2020, our membership growth was similar to the prior 2 years, including in the US and Canada, the company explained. Then, with lockdown orders in many countries starting in March, many more households joined Netflix. As for specific numbers, Netflix had just shy of 183 million global subscribers at the end of March, up from 167.1 million at the end of 2019. So a significant jump there. That compares with about 8.8 million new subs in the fourth quarter of 2019 and 9.6 million during the first 3 months of 2019. Says in the United States and Canada, membership now stands at just under 70 million subscribers versus 67.7 million when it last reported numbers. The biggest growth region was Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, where Netflix added just under 7 million new homes and grew to 58.7 million subscribers. I do know that in Europe, they actually had to tell Netflix to decrease the quality of their stream because they were actually taking up all the bandwidth in Europe. Because I think in Europe, the lockdown was such that people flocked to Netflix, and they actually were breaking the internet over there. So this is an interesting article about the growth of Netflix during the pandemic and it being well situated compared to some of the other streaming services. But there is some caution in this because Netflix still is going to have the same issues as everybody else once they start running out of content. They have more content available than the other streaming providers in terms of Netflix is probably going to be releasing new content all the way to the end of this year. but that doesn't mean that they're not pushing back projects right now, because they're not filming either. So they're going to have the content problem the same as everybody else. It's just that it's going to take them longer to get there. Right now, they are definitely situated very well compared to the other streaming platforms. And so I have another. This one I think is kind of a fun streaming wars topic. And this is from Adweek, and this was also something I had meant to talk about last week, but I was having so many problems with my stream, I wasn't able to actually talk about this. So this is an older article, but it says, there's a new player in the streaming wars, Yeti. Austin outdoor brand launches calming entertainment just in time for Earth Day. Again, this article is a little dated. I apologize about that, but I still want to talk about it because it's kind of fun. It says, go ahead, take a look at your credit card statement. How many streaming services have you signed up for? If you're like some of us, you'll pretty much be paying $12.99 a month for a long time, courtesy of the Walt Disney Company and Disney Plus. Then there's YouTube TV, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and several other services that make you wish you were back with your cable bundle. Your cable bundle. And I've said that before. It's like the streaming wars is going to be cable all over again. But what this particular article was about is that this streaming service Yeti, okay, is actually literally a service of watching streams, which I thought was kind of funny and clever. So you basically go onto Yeti Plus, and you can see all these different shots of streams around the world, and it's kind of like white noise along with these sort of picturesque scenes, and you can be entertained by a stream, and you can have the calming effect of a stream on your streaming service. So I thought this was kind of a fun thing. Again, this was also meant to be something that tied into Earth Day. So I don't know exactly what the status is of the service right now. They still have it, but I did think it was funny, and I did think it was interesting that there was a new streaming wars participant that is literally showing us streams. So I thought that was kind of something fun to share. And I have one more streaming wars article here. And also tell my voice is starting to go. It is a lot different when you're the only one talking. But so this is sort of hot off the presses. This is only a day old. This is a Variety article. And it says, listen, Britbox CEO stands her ground amid the streaming wars. And I'm not going to even try to pronounce her name because I'm just going to butcher it anyway. But the Britbox has also been a player in the streaming wars. It says, it isn't easy staying competitive in a streaming sector crowded with ventures big and small. But Britbox's CEO is secure in her corner of the market. Britbox Super serves the super fans of British TV shows, including Vera and Hold the Sunset. And the service's demographic skews towards women over 45. That's a core audience segment with no shortage of pay TV and streaming brands vying for their attention with programming of all stripes. But the CEO is confident she can hold onto her audience despite the quick churn world of subscription VOD. Quote, the market is very crowded. We're staying focused on who we are. The audience that comes with us will stay loyal. All our metrics to date tell us that. The joint venture of BBC Studios and ITV, Britbox has attracted more than 1 million subscribers in its 3 years of operation in North America, spanning recently to the UK and Australia. The growing popularity of UK TV fare has prompted her to revise her growth expectations. So this is an interesting thing because, as you can see, Britbox, we just talked about the massive numbers that Netflix has. Netflix, is just the gigantic elephant in the room right now. But here we're talking about a service that just has about 1 million subscribers, and the CEO is very confident and very pleased with that number. And I think what it shows you is that one of the ways to navigate the streaming wars that we don't talk about as much right now, because so many of the big players keep coming out. I mean, Peacock basically just had what I call like their soft release, where they're available to their cell phone subscribers. HBO Max is right around the corner. These are all the big players. Britbox is really more of that niche. They're really got that small market. And I think that's kind of the way that a lot of things are going. The way I kind of phrase it is this is the vinylization of media, the violentization, the vinyl, again, I'm stumbling over my word, the vinylization of media. And what I mean by that is vinyl records. Okay, so vinyl records were an industry that was almost completely dead when CDs took over. In fact, there's that famous scene in Wayne's World where Tia Carrere's character talks about how her album will never be on vinyl. And she's like, isn't that weird? And Wayne's like, yeah, that is weird. And the fact of the matter is, they were wrong. Vinyl has made a comeback. Now, vinyl is never going to be what it was. It's never going to be the primary mode in which people listen to music, but it has found an audience. Vinyl records continue to be made. Turntables continue to be made. Nowhere near the numbers they used to be, but they are made at a number that is profitable enough that people are still making vinyl records and people are still making turntables. And I think in the streaming wars, this is the same kind of strategy that can work, because a lot of the streaming wars platforms, a lot of the streaming services, they seem to be going for that knockout punch. They seem to want to be the quote unquote the new Netflix, or they want to displace Netflix. Well, I got news for you. Nobody's going to be Netflix. Not even Netflix is going to be Netflix. The reason is because Netflix kind of started all this. Netflix began cord cutting before it was a term. I know because I did it. I had the Netflix service that gave you CDs. And then what happened was I decided to go ahead and get the streaming service, which meant I had to get cable internet. Well, I already had cable, and I was paying for internet and cable, and I was paying for the Netflix service. And I said, you know what? I can't do this. This is ridiculous. These are all new monthly charges that are going to affect my budget. At the time, I was just, my kids were just being born. I was like, I can't do this. So I cut the cord before it was even a term. And I basically said, okay, I'm going to stick with high-speed internet, which eventually I actually got rid of my cable internet and went to DSL because it was a little bit cheaper. And I stuck with Netflix. And I've had Netflix ever since. So I have Netflix, I have my internet, and then I bought an antenna, which I get surprised sometimes with how few people have an antenna, especially in this day and age. If you're trying to save some money, you need an antenna. But I digress. The point is that what happened was Netflix had this ridiculous share of the market because it was a market that didn't exist. They sort of invented the market. And slowly but surely, other streaming services have also come about. Obviously, we have Apple TV, we have Amazon. There are a myriad of other services. But everybody, I think, when it comes to the big players, and I'm talking about Apple, I'm talking about Disney, I'm talking about HBO, Time Warner, and I'm talking about NBC Universal with Peacock. I think all these guys are trying to, quote unquote, compete with Netflix, be the new Netflix, take over Netflix, that kind of a thing. And I feel like they're all going to eventually sort of burn themselves out. And the people that might survive might be these smaller channels like Britbox. I think this is a way forward for surviving the streaming wars. If you can have a small but profitable channel, then you will have a place. Whereas a lot of these larger platforms, I think, are not going to make it. I think they're going to face one of two things. They're going to go out of business or they're going to consolidate. And it might be both. Because if they go out of business, they might have to consolidate. In other words, if they go out of business, somebody's going to buy their IP. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. Just like what's happened to Fox Studios, just like what happened to Lucasfilm, just like what happened to Marvel, just like what happened to so many other studios and other platforms from the past that are no longer with us. So I think that's going to happen in the streaming wars one way or another anyway, that they're going to consolidate. I think the places that actually are going to be able to maintain their specific identity are going to be places like Britbox, where they kind of have that little niche audience, and they have that little niche, where they basically, they are going to be able to survive because they know their audience. They know that their audience is sort of this set number. They're going to be able to appeal to their audience, and they're going to be able to remain profitable to that audience, very much in the same way that vinyl records are profitable today. So I think that this is definitely a way forward in the streaming wars, especially for smaller channels. And quite frankly, I think even some of the larger channels might look at this model at some point if they want to survive, if they don't want to be Fox, which, by the way, interestingly enough, I've talked about this before. Fox basically decided that they were leaving the streaming wars and sold most of their IP to Disney. Everybody knows about that. But the funny thing is, Fox is still around. Fox Corporation is still around because they still own the network. They still own Fox News, Fox Sports. There's a couple other entities that Fox still owns. And they recently bought Tubi, which tells you that even though they supposedly gave up on the streaming wars, well, I guess not, because they basically took over Tubi. So they very much are part of the streaming wars. Except rather than make their own platform, they acquired somebody else's, which I also think is an interesting idea and an interesting way forward. There are other free platforms that I don't know who owns them. For instance, like Pluto TV, Crackle is owned by Sony, but there are all sorts of other platforms out there right now, including things like Stir, which I don't know a whole lot about. But there's all sorts of other platforms that are available out there, and it might be interesting to see if some of these companies start acquiring them to basically navigate the streaming wars. We'll just have to see. So that's pretty much all I have. I'm just over an hour, which I think is definitely good for just me and not having a co-host. If anybody did tune in, I really appreciate you tuning in. Manasan, I know you were here earlier, and I appreciate you being here. Just so everybody knows, if anybody's wondering, Retro Rogues Live still lives as well. We were just off for 1 week because Dave wasn't feeling well. He thinks that he'll be back next week. But I'm going to continue doing, my base god live, the god of base. I haven't decided whether I'm going to be doing it on Tuesdays or Thursdays. Obviously, this first test run was on a Thursday, so maybe next week I'll try it on a Tuesday, the day before Retro Rogues Live. I won't be doing it the day of Retro Rogues Live, though. I'm not going to compete against myself and compete against my co-host. So I'm either going to probably do it as sort of a supplement, one way or the other, where maybe I'll talk about things leading up to the show, or maybe I will talk about things I didn't get to talk about in the show because of time. So anyway, if anybody was out there, I appreciate you listening, and everybody be safe out there.